Okay. Hello, everyone. I just want to welcome everyone to the New Testament. I know that you guys have been basically waiting for a long while to continue on with our journey with everything that we've been learning through my Covenant series, through also my Pit Stop series I did a little bit. Almost got a little off track. Even did some other things, went through Joshua. Basically, we went through as much of the Old Testament as we could about the story of the Gentiles' relationship to the Israelites, and their posture that God had toward them in the Old Testament. And now we're still going to be going in the Old Testament a little bit in the beginning, but from there we're going to go straight to the New Testament. I decided to do my videos a little differently for the New Testament. I'm trying to switch up my style and see if which one works most effectively. This style will be done in like a PowerPoint presentation. I figured instead of using all these visuals, it'd be easier for you guys to actually just read the evidence yourself. Once again, I keep it biblical, and I really do hope that you really pay attention to this, especially if you are a Black Hebrew Israelite. This video will not waste your time, and it will have a view in there that a lot of your leaders are not telling you. Basically, what I'm trying to do is present to you the Bible in the way that it's supposedly supposed to be read. I go only with the Greek and Hebrew translations and the culture and the customs of the types of people that were around back then, and why they did those things accordingly. So without further ado, let's get started with the New Testament. Well, first, the Old Testament. Okay, so welcome to the New Testament, everyone. As it says on the screen, I'm basically going to save all the things I truly wish to put into perspective, like the significance of Jesus and the New Testament stories in general, that being the true meaning of the New Testament, and not what I'm about to get into. Basically, I'm just going to refute the false doctrine of Israelites and the Gentile state of mind once and for all. It's a belief that the people that Paul, Peter, and Jesus were even trying to preach and witness to were Jews. They weren't Gentiles. That's the view. So the question is, was Jesus, Paul, Peter, and the rest of the apostles preaching only to Israel? Did they hold this belief that salvation was only for Israel? Let's find out. First off, we have to take into account a few things. One, let's get into the perspective of Christians and Christianity. A lot of people don't believe this, but as you can see on your screen here, the Old Testament talks about these newcomers of God's servants and how they would have a new name. In Isaiah 62, verse 2, it says, "And the Gentiles shall see thy righteousness, and all the kings thy glory. And thou shalt be called by a new name, which the mouth of the Lord shall name." And finally, in the New Testament at the bottom, you can see in Acts chapter 11, verse 26 and 27, basically it says, "And the disciples were called Christians first in Antioch. And in these days came prophets from Jerusalem unto Antioch." Now, that is a new term for the New Testament to have. All this time, you heard of Israelites, and all of a sudden, this new name comes out of nowhere because of Christ. So if you jump back to the Old Testament, it says, once again to fulfill that, "And ye shall leave your name for a curse unto my chosen. For the Lord shall slay thee, and shall call his servants by another name." So there it is. Acts chapter 9, verse 15. I put that as a comparison to Isaiah 62, verse 2. If you look, it says, "But the Lord said unto him," being Jesus, because that was the color of the words that were in red, it says, "Go thy way, for he is a chosen vessel unto me, to bear my name before the Gentiles, kings, and children of Israel." And what's it say in verse 2 up there in Isaiah? "And the Gentiles shall see thy righteousness, and all kings thy glory." So there it is. These things are being fulfilled. And also, there's other verses that I definitely could have picked out, talking about how the Gentiles shall be converted unto thee. But anyway, let's kind of conclude that the Christians were foretold in the Old Testament. So we will now follow their accounts in the New Testament. So, let me just start off with some really light stuff. Don't worry, I'll get into all the heavy stuff in a second. But I just wanted to point out some little, very light facts. One, the book of Titus, he was a Greek Gentile. His gospel is in our New Testament canon. And he was one of Paul's converts. So Titus was a Greek, and Titus was like a son to Paul. Basically, he was a Christian and one of Paul's intimate friends, his companion in some of his apostolic journeys, and one of his assistants in Christian work. He also was considered a son of the faith to Paul. Titus remained an uncircumcised Christian. Why is that important? We'll tell you in a minute later. Because Paul defended him from Jews who persecuted Gentiles wanting to convert without circumcision. Basically, there was a party in the church, a Judaic party, and they desired to have Titus circumcised. This was in the book of Acts. But basically, Paul gave no subjection to these persons and to their wishes. He basically said, no, not for an hour, that the truth of the gospel might continue with you. You can read that in Galatians. The matter, basically, the dispute was decided and recorded in Acts 15, verses 13 through 29. And from there, the decision was in favor of free promulgation of the gospel, as preached by Paul, and unrestricted by Jewish ordinances. Paul's action, therefore, in regard to Titus was justified. In fact, Titus was a representative, or almost like a test case. We're going to get into Acts chapter 15 later on down the road. But basically, just know that it was all the Pharisees that got together and had this dispute with the apostles. And I'm assuming that, Titus was there in the middle of that. It is difficult and perhaps impossible to give the true reason why Titus is not mentioned in the book of Acts. But he is certainly referred to. You can look at the bottom. It says, the certain other of them being the apostles, and other being Titus. Basically, it talks about that in Galatians chapter 2, verse 3. It is recorded that Titus was then with Paul. So, I pulled up some software, eSword software, of the term proselyte. And basically, a proselyte is, according to the New Testament, a convert to Judaism. Now, this term alone, proselyte, basically throws a big wrench in the whole, all the Gentiles that Paul and all that were supposedly talking to were supposedly Jews. But yet you have in their own writings that they're making distinctions between Gentiles, Jews, and now proselytes. If you read on the screen here, it talks about